Let's talk about the New York Yankees here. There's plenty to talk about with this team. And, first and foremost, we have to talk about Aaron Judge obviously returning. There was some conversations, and obviously even John Heyman, and I'm sure John Heyman's is absolutely hated in New York right now, stating that he's going to go to the Giants. A couple minutes later, puts out a tweet and says, "Just kidding." I think he dropped below Bobby Nightingale after that tweet and in trustworthiness. So a lot of issues going on with that. But he gets re-signed, 9 years, $360 million. Very interesting. Very interesting with Aaron Judge. A lot of thoughts on that. I was personally hoping he'd go to San Francisco. One, because it's called the Giants, and how cool would that be? Just come on that half. And I think it just would have been neat to see him and the West Coast, and I think the NL West would have been better for it. Yankees would have still found a way to be the Yankees, right? So I was rooting for it. However, him coming back in pinstripes will make sense. He's going to look like he's going to spend his entire career as a Yankee. I believe they need to give him the captain for coming back. I think that's the thing that, I know that's a big deal in Yankee land. I think that has to happen. What's your thoughts about Aaron Judge returning? You hate it, right?
Uh, Honestly, no, I can't hate it. I would love to hate it, but I can't because I think it was the only possible solution for this offseason. And I'm not even convinced that all the trips out to San Francisco and all of that stuff wasn't specifically to come back to New York
Right.
anyway.
To raise
I'm
to
not
raise it up,
convinced.
to raise
Yeah.
the bank. Yeah.
I mean, because how can the New York Yankees possibly not even like take away the context of competing for the division, take away all of that? How can they just let him go? You know what I mean? And I know they made offers and all of that stuff too, but essentially at the end of the day, it would have been just letting Aaron Judge walk after the season that he had, after being the face of that team and the really one of the only highlights of that team
Yep.
in my mind. Certainly outside of New York,
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Judge was the Yankees, right? So it was a foregone conclusion in my mind. So when the numbers that doesn't matter to me at all, really. It is what it is because he was going to come back anyway. And it just makes the division that much more fun. As much as, it would have been great to see him hitting Barry Bonds type home runs out in San Francisco.
Right. Yeah, that would have
You
been
know,
really fun to see. I mean, it
but
would have been fun to
yeah,
see, but we're not getting that. There was an interesting thing as well. Obviously, it was between New York and San Francisco, a lot bouncing back and forth between there, but there was also an offer from the Padres that was very sizable. And the Padres just seem to be all over the place, and it really just makes you wonder about those money palm trees you talked about earlier in the show.
hmm
But what was it, 14 years for what, $400 million or something like that? It was wild. I mean, insane. Do you believe that was actually an offer, or was that still the same kind of concept of just trying to drive the money up from the Yankees?
Okay, so this is fascinating to me. I don't know if San Diego is on there, like, let's just collect as much talent as we can and hope to God something sticks. It's the spaghetti theory, right?
Yeah.
Like, throw it against the wall and see, right? I don't know. I can't get my head around the San Diego Padres. If I'm one of their fans, I'm like, I don't care. This is the greatest ever. It's the greatest time to be alive. I don't know if that was a ploy or not. But what I did find interesting is when I read about this offer that San Diego allegedly made, that Major League Baseball would have vetoed it right away, saying it was the length of the contract would only be to circumvent the competitive balance tax, right? Which I found very interesting. Because at first, before I read the whole competitive balance tax and it was the focus was really on that 14-year term, I was like, oh, of course, Major League Baseball is going to step in and block anything that takes Aaron Judge out of New York, right? That's where my head goes as a Blue Jays fan and somebody who's not a fan of the Yankees. And also, Christian, did you hear that story? There was a study done of balls, and there was a percentage. And oh shoot, I wish I had it because it fits with this so well. But essentially, they studied balls used in 2022, and the ones that were specifically like juiced or dead or whatever. And overwhelmingly, the sample that they took out of New York was skewed heavily to juiced, and everywhere else it was dead.
Some are at 22. I mean, they found a way to
It,
come back after COVID to bring that money back up. Why don't we have a home run race? I mean,
I
if you
mean, it,
remember, some of the steroids, if you will, became legal at the beginning of this season as well. Now, not all of them, as we know, Tatis
yeah,
Jr. there, but some of them became legal, if you will, in the
right,
aspects of, well, that we're not going to test for them. So
right, yeah,
take
yeah,
that as you will. I'm not
yeah.
saying the judge did that, but there was a lot of things that lined up in the aspects of, well, we got to find a way to, especially after this lockout in CBA we just had, and the owners and everybody talking about how they don't make enough money. And then
Mhm.
all of a sudden we have a crazy home run race that wound up having some pretty good numbers for the MLB season this year. Really
Mhm.
makes you scratch your head. Okay. I think I just saw some more gray hairs come out for all my controversy theories. Now,
Yeah,
another thing with the Yankees here. Now, I think we can talk about Aaron Judge and what he's going to do until we're blue in the face. So let's put a cap on that one.
yeah,
Congrats for Judge coming back. That's good. I think it's good for baseball to have him on the Yankees and be in pinstripe.
yes.
Although I would like to see him in the NL West. I think that would make West Coast baseball more fun. Yankees baseball is always going to be fun, but good for Aaron Judge.
Mhm.
Regardless, there's some more news that's going to be talking about the Yankees during the entire winter as we get all the way into spring. And right now, I think that's around probably the hottest free agent left. And that's Carlos Rondon. They seem to be the front runner right now, as so that some say. Now, this is coming out from John Heyman. Take it as you will, based on what we've seen in the past. But there is a, quote, sizable gap between what the Yankees offered and what Carlos Rondon is seeking in free agency. So I have seen 7 years for 200 million as some options. I've seen some as high as 220 for 7 as well. It looks like Rondon's looking for that 6th or 7th year to be the kicker to make it happen. If he's not interested in 7 for 200 or 7 220, you got to think that, and it's a sizable gap. You got to think that he's looking more towards that 250 mark. That's big time numbers for a starting pitcher.
Yeah, yeah, and one who was not too long ago forced to take a 1 year deal to try and prove himself, right? Like
Which he
that's he's
did.
asking, and he did.
Yeah.
And let's not take anything away from him. That's a sizable ask, though. And you know what? The New York Yankees don't really need a Carlos Rodon, right? They've got a good rotation in Nestor Cortez and Garrett Cole and Uvalde, or not Uvalde. I always mix them up. Luis Severino. That's they've got a good rotation. So they don't necessarily need to go and back up a dump truck full of cash and so they can afford to walk away. It's rather interesting though that they are still in on him. Um, I think that's fascinating because it shows that they're not giving up. You know what I mean. They're not going to just sit back and be okay with the rotation that they have. So that clearly sends a message to the teams that the Houston Astros, the Blue Jays, and those other teams who have designs on the postseason, right? Like the Yankees aren't satisfied with their 2022 season, even though it was a good season. They're not going to be satisfied with that. So that's what it means to me because I really think they don't need a starting pitcher. They need an outfielder more than they need a starting pitcher.
Glad you talked about the outfielder. Obviously, they had issues with Joey Gallo last season, and Aaron Hicks was no help either. So obviously, looking for outfield help is a key, I think, as well. You talked about the D-backs deal earlier with
Mm-hmm.
the Blue Jays. Is that something that could come into play with the Yankees as well? It kind of speaks down their alley as well in that regard.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. In all honesty, like that's where I see the Yankees going shopping as well. And they, how Tampa Bay has this knack for pulling off trades as well, but the Yankees seem to have this knack for pulling off trades that are incredibly in their favor. They didn't. It feels like anyway they didn't give up much for Giancarlo Stanton, and I'm still bitter about it. So I feel like if it comes down to a trade between the Blue Jays and the Yankees that the Diamondbacks have to choose from, I'm I'm a little nervous about how that's going to end up.
Yeah, that's something interesting to keep looking forward to. Maybe it'll happen before we talk about the NL West, or maybe it'll happen the day after we record about them, because that seems to be the case. All right,
Yeah.
because we're on that nice path of wild things happen as soon as these episodes are over, be on the lookout for some AL East news.